You're listening to a Countout Podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 2 of Stardom Road here on the Countout Network. I am your host, Scott Edwards. With me, as always, as in 2 episodes, is Trent. Trent, how you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. It's been a week, but it's been a good week. So it's good to get back into the swing of things and get into the zone of this co-hosting job with one of your podcasts. It's a nice feeling.
Co-hosting.
Yeah. I've moved up in the world.
You have billing on this,
Second billing.
Well,
but
to
I
be
can
fair,
come for that title.
it's alphabetical by first name. So,
man, you're on S and you get front billing. That's actually impressive.
Yeah, I mean, hey, thanks for being named Trent, my friend. But I think the first episode received a lot of. I appreciate all the kind words. A lot of people were really looking forward to jumping in. I know people that went and watched the match and then listened to us, which is kind of what I hope everyone does, which is why we're going to say what we're going to watch at the end of every episode so that you can check it out beforehand. Because, I mean, if you're just kind of listening to us blab about a show or a match, we can only do so much for you. But if you watch it yourself and then you can hear us talk about it, then so on. And that's very important today, I think. As
much as we can talk about how good Aikawa's kicks were, if you don't see them, there's only so much. So we try and give you context, and we want to give you a little bit of background and stuff where possible. But go on this journey with us by watching the shows. Some are easier to find than others. Stardom World doesn't have everything, but if you can watch as much as you can with us, not only do you get to go down this Stardom Road with us, but it's not going to be quite as confusing if we're talking about little aspects. We try and explain it as if you're not watching, but we do understand. We can get a little excited and find ourselves deep in the bushes of these things.
Yeah, so what we're talking about today, if you read the title, you probably know. If you remember what we said last time, is we are going to discuss the very first show in Stardom's history, Birth of Nova, of course, January 23rd, 2011. As we know, we have those anniversary shows every year, so it's not like it's difficult to forget that anniversary, but it did all start. I believe it was Shinkiba first ring,
Yes.
a perfect spot, I think, for history to begin. They ran that spot a lot, obviously.
It was their go-to in Tokyo for a long time, and that's understandable.
I've always loved that venue, personally.
When I go back to Japan, I would love to catch a show there, just because I've seen so many events at Shinkiba First Ring, but I've never been there. And it feels like, you look at Kurikan Hall, you can get a feel for the venue, but Shinkiba First Ring kind of feels like its own beast.
Yeah, because it's so dark.
And it's just a warehouse, basically.
Yeah, and what I always loved about it is the ring is the focus. That is right. Like when everyone's making their entrance, it's the ring. That's all that's lit up. You can hear the crowd, but you can't necessarily see them. And this first show has a lot of ups, a lot of downs, a very important couple of debuts. Lots of names that are very important to the history of Stardom. Some names that didn't last that long after the first show as well, which is another interesting part of this. But we have some fun history stuff to go over here. I know Trent put this together, which is really fun. We're going to look back at many things from back in 2011 when Stardom was getting ready, finally had their first show. So I will let you take that away, Trent.
No worries. Well, it's difficult sometimes to get true context for what's going on when you're looking back at over a decade worth of time and space. So here's what the wrestling world looked like at the very end of 2010 heading into 2011. The PWI Women's Top 50, not 150, there was 50 back then. The Top 50 of 2010. Top 5 was Eve Torres. Number 4 was Cheerleader Melissa. Number 3 was Mercedes Martinez. Number 2 was Angelina Love. And number 1 was Michelle McCool. Now that right there, those names, like it's a nice mix of I vaguely remember them and they were that high on the list. It's kind of crazy seeing how far, and obviously this is Western coverage, but it's kind of crazy to go back to where it was and to where the coverage is now and seeing the talent pool is so much. Like you've got to be so much better just to get a look in these days in women's wrestling, which is partly due to Joshi's return to prominence, but just also the West as well kind of picking up their game. Not horrible talents necessarily on this list, but certain names that you see there you wouldn't expect to see on a 2022 list.
No. It's funny you mentioned that because we're sitting here recording this a week earlier. I'll be admitted to everyone a week earlier than the show comes out, but I know that the PWI 150 women's list is coming out later this week. So that was good timing that you actually had that. And we don't have any complaints today. So I can't say, this Joshi wrestler should have been higher, but it's good to see that it's changed so much. That we're seeing those Joshi wrestlers higher. We just need them to get to number 1 already, so we can get some respect in here. If Shuri's not number 1, there's a problem. I'm just kidding, not really. But the idea of where we were, right? Because 2010, right? Everyone acknowledges like Joshi had their dark ages. Like not enough people cared, but there was still so much talent back then. Yeah. And it's a shame that for many people that's forgotten or just skipped over, but like that's when Emi Sakura was doing her thing, and Kaori Oniyama and Meiko Satomura are like these are big names, and just kind of got glazed over, which stinks. But
it's kind of crazy. You look at someone like an Emi Sakura or even a Kaori, who you're going to look at, like when you're looking at their careers, so much focus is going to be on their final years. Like, we're going to remember Kaori as being a clown and Emi Sakura kind of pushing the Gato movement, but it's kind of forgetting that they, spent 10, 20 years in wrestling just to get to that point. Because everyone kind of focuses on the AJW sort of golden era, and then we just kind of forget that women's wrestling in Japan was a thing until Stardom and TJPW started to get recognition and start to get their foot back in the door.
Yeah, and I think Emi Sakura, like, truthfully, will go down as one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. Especially her impact will be underrated for long. I mean, she trained so many of the best we see today, right? And it's translated to so many memorable moments, whether it's with her or without her. And her legacy will continue on forever, whether people know it or not. But this is a Stardom podcast after all. So
she has appeared in Stardom, but she's not a focal point.
We'll save the Emi Sakura praise for another podcast that is in Stardom Road, because she deserves it. And
Chocolate Road coming soon.
Chocolate Road. Yeah, we'll just go through every single show they've done, which is a lot.
We're going to be playing catch up on that.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. But as I said, Stardom, Birth of Noah. Did you have any more 2010, 2011? Hit you with?
If you weren't paying a lot of attention to women's wrestling back then, those names might not ring much of a bell. Well, it is literally the Divas Championship was around this time. Natalia was the champion and dropped it to Eve Torres at the Royal Rumble a week later. A Royal Rumble that Alberto Del Rio won, which I believe was at the time
Boston.
The biggest Royal Rumble of all time. I think they were billing it as. And then you had The Miz headlining WrestleMania against John Cena, also known as John Cena versus The Rock 0.5, because everyone forgot Miz was even in that match, including The Miz, who got concussed. We had Hiroshi Tanahashi winning the IWGP Heavyweight Championship, not World Heavyweight, just Heavyweight Championship at Wrestle Kingdom 5, defeating Satoshi Kojima. During that time, Prince Devitt, a.k.a. Finn Balor, was the IWGP Junior Heavyweight Champion. So there's a little bit of a context to where we were at 2010, 2011, just to get you in the mood for Birth of Nova.
You know what all that told me? We needed Stardom more than ever. Stardom couldn't have started at a better time after you told me all that. And of course, Ross Diagawa leading that with Nanae Takahashi to create what we see today as the biggest women's promotion in the world, the biggest, of course, since AJW. And you kind of, as a fan, almost, you kind of humble yourself watching these old shows, because we're so used to now the big venues and the pomp and circumstance and the excitement of, these world-class matches. But if you go back to this first show, there's a lot of new wrestlers, there's rookies, there's people debuting, there's, you got a couple vets on this show, but a lot of it, two, but a lot of it's establishing what this is going to be moving forward. And
the proof of concept.
Yeah, and my favorite part of the show is you read so many names, and they range throughout Stardom's history of importance, right? Like the early ages, the main players are on here. And of course, spoiler alert, Mayu Iwatani's on here. So yes, we have the whole history covered thanks to her. But as you'll hear as we go on, we have a main event that's very key. And I was watching this show, and I try not to tweet about the matches or anything because I want to save it all for the show, which is very difficult for me, of course. But I would walk away and be like, this person deserves more respect. Yuzuki Aikawa is an all-timer, and she did it in 3 years. It's the little things like that you just notice from this show. And it's just incredible what they created. Even on their, the first show, you didn't walk away and be like, wow, that was a must-see all-time classic. But you walked away with it yeah, I see how this became what it is.
It's a very important show from a historical sort of perspective. You want to be able to go back and sort of say, okay, this is where Stardom was, and then go to, say, Dream Queendom and go, well, this is where they reach in 11 years, and kind of see that progression. That's so important. But as a show itself, it's very much just a basic proof of concept. Here are our stars of tomorrow and a couple of people to guide them. I hope you enjoy what you see. There's no undue pretenses. They're not trying to hype themselves up as the best thing in wrestling right now. It's more just, we have something that we believe in. We have wrestlers that we think can become something. Let's go on this journey together. And it's a fun little show. And I mean, for all it's not the big arenas and it doesn't have thousands of people in attendance like Stardom get now. The crowd was loud, really.
It was.
Louder than the current shows. But yeah, it was good to hear them getting into a whole bunch of people that they don't know at this stage.
Yeah, exactly. So to go through a few things here, this show did air on Samurai TV. It was taped and aired, I think, 2 weeks after, on February 5th, 2011. The attendance, I'm not a big attendance guy, but I feel like this is important for these things. Their attendance was 466, which in Chikiba First Ring is pretty good.
It's pretty packed. And
you felt it watching the show that it was packed. Like you said, it was loud. It was. You would think the company was running for a lot longer. And I'm going to give a lot of credit to someone like an Aikawa, who obviously had a following before stepping into a wrestling ring. I'm sure that helped a lot. But you have that mix of, as we said, especially in this opening match, you had an Aikawa, you had two vets, and you had someone else. But it's just so interesting because it's a first show for a company. You don't know. Like, yes, Rossi has his past, and Nanae Takahashi has her past, but that can only go so far. It's still a show. Like, when you heard Stardom back then, no one was like, "Oh, this is the company." There's not a chance anyone said that, except besides maybe Rossi Agawa. But by the end of it, I will say, you kind of felt that specialness to it. Just even in rookie matches, you just felt like, oh, I see that potential that ultimately got bigger and bigger. Like, even if you just look to 13, this company was so different.
Oh yeah, yeah. Just the names that you sing through, the way they operate,
and something interesting. I had the number earlier, but I forgot it, so I apologize. Give me 1 second. But yeah, give your thoughts on this while I go get my number back.
Yeah, and look, it's not a show that you're going to put on your must-watch list outside of historical precedents. But what's really impressive through this whole thing is, 90% of this group are either in their first match or they've had 1 or 2 matches that were not really of any significance. The only people who had any proper experience was Natsuki Tayo and Nanae Takahashi. The general level of these matches across the board, as simple as they were, as first match versus first match as they are, you can see that the level of training and growth just in these 6 to 8 months that most of these wrestlers have had is actually pretty impressive. And so you've got to give a lot of credit to Fuka, got to give a lot of credit to Nanae Takahashi for getting these youngsters ready to be in such a stage. Because typically rookies get their first or second match, they're getting to work with someone who knows their way around the wrestling ring. Most of these girls didn't get that opportunity. They were thrown in with someone else who was as deer in the headlights as they were. So to get the kind of match level that they were getting is actually quite impressive.
Yeah. So the little factoid I wanted to give was they ran 27 shows in their first year. Just think about that as thinking about it now, right? And the amount of shows they run, it's like laughable. Almost, it's like,
but that's twice a month for a brand new company.
Yeah, exactly.
I think you take
3 shows that aired. At least according to Cage Match, that's not guaranteed. Of course, they've probably showed stuff over time, but 3 like pay-per-view type shows. So let's get into it. Let's get into Birth of Nova, starting out with the very first match. By the way, to the people wondering, this is on Stardom World. You can go check it out. I know I have to be specific because everything we watch isn't necessarily on Stardom World. But if you ask me or Trent, we'll make sure to help you out if it isn't. And maybe I'll try to get it in our podcast descriptions moving forward. But we'll see. That's not my job.
We'll make a way to make it work.
Yeah, because we want you to see the match.
Hey guys, we're not inapproachable. You can come say hey.
Yeah. I mean, I sometimes am, but that's
just
fine.
placating by saying, "Hi, I'm a big Mayu fan. Can I get this
obscure
show from 2013?"
You're in, unless you're like the jerks. Some of the people that were in like my quote tweets from this past week that were like, someone said, "Oh, it should have been Tommy versus Kyrie," and the exact words were, "This should be good, I guess." Talking about Kyrie versus Mayu, it's like, you guess.
Well, we might have a whole show dedicated to why that is a crazy assumption for it to just be, I guess.
Wink, wink, nudge, nudge. We'll get to that later on. But the opening match was Natsuki Tayo and Yuzuki Akawa versus the team of Iris and Nanae Takahashi. So you may hear that and you say, "Oh, I know 3 of them." Iris, I got the backstage info on Iris. She's only 27 now. Worth noting. So she wrestled 6 matches in her career. A whopping
6 matches that are on Cage Match.
That are on Cage Match.
Because I do have some information that questions the full validity of Cage Matches levels.
So her last match in Stardom, according to Cage Match, was on April 3rd, 2011. Yes, that was less than 3 months after the show.
I can confirm that because she had a tearful goodbye with Natsuki Tayo in the ring.
Yep, that was the final match. She of course is the odd one out here when we look at the 3 because
she's not Japanese.
Well,
is that not what you meant?
No, that's not what I meant at all. But that is important. She's from Mexico.
Yes, from Mexico.
And I will say, this was her, according to Cage Match. Now, I don't believe that much because I'm sure she had more than 1 match, I think, which was in Mexico.
Yeah, Cage Match is notoriously, like, the Mexican independent scene is difficult for them to track. You kind of got to have people on the ground. According to the fandom wiki, she was actually a tag team champion, the Action Zone tag titles. Now, I can't find information to back this up, But there's a fun little side fact
Yeah.
if you're trying to learn more about Iris.
Yeah, so don't use cage match if you want to learn more. Because she had 6 matches, which she ultimately retired 3 months later against Natsuki Tayo. Like we said, we won't be talking about Iris much more after this show. So just wanted to give her.
We're not doing 3 episodes dedicated to her.
No. She don't have enough matches for that.
Well, 6 matches, 6 episodes. We can make that work.
I don't think I can. Listen, I can do a lot of things, but I don't know if I can make that work.
Apparently, she speaks English pretty well,
which is great. Good for her. Maybe she can come back and be a English commentator for Stardom. She'll be like, "I'm back," and everyone will be like, "Who? What? Who are you?" Be like, "Oh, I was in the first ever match."
Listeners of Stardom Road,
not only
Iris. I heard about them talk about her for 10 minutes.
This is the best part. Not only was she in the first match, she was the winner. Well, she was part of the winning team in the first match, which is still important.
But
yeah, so I thought there was a lot to like here in the overall match. You could feel how different it was when Iris was in there as opposed to her partner Nanai Takahashi. But my biggest takeaway by far is that you knew who the star of this company was watching this match. That's how I felt. It wasn't Nanai. It wasn't Tayo. It wasn't Iris, unfortunately. It was Yuzuki Aikawa. Just everything she did and the excitement that people had when she stepped in there. And as we talked about before we even started talking on this show, all those fears from that first match, see ya, gone out the window. She was there to brutalize Nanai Takahashi with her kicks.
You can see the difference in how she fought Iris versus how she fought Nanai.
Yes.
Yeah, he was like, okay, you're new like me. Let's kind of go through the ropes. I'm not going to try and take your head off. Oh, I know you. You beat me last time. Murder mode. Axe kick to the face.
Violent kicks to the face. Like if you watch wrestling today, my best comparison is probably Shuri.
Just like kicks, yeah.
Kicks wise, I'm just talking kicks. I mean, this was like she had 1, 2, 3, not many matches to her name by this point, but even though that's true, she was still very good for her experience. You could just she had the unteachable charisma to her, which just that brings you so many steps forward. But her kicks were, of course, compact and physical. That's the best part of her game and always was. But just her and Nanai in there, it was like these two have been wrestling for more than one match, which, of course, training goes a long way. But I was just so blown away by that. I was like, this is the star of this company. You don't have to question it. Nanai might have thought she was a star, but this was the star of Stardom from the very beginning.
And the story they tell in this tag match kind of highlights that. Like, she starts off strong against Iris and then basically goes into a similar mode to where they did with that sort of very first match she had, where she's dealing with Nanai's overwhelming power, but getting moves in, getting chances to shine, that babyface fire coming through. Ultimately, she comes up short, but someone that you're building around as that underdog face to overcome the dominant kind of face of the company in Nanai. This is exactly the story that you tell. And she got good support from Tayo during that sort of final third of the match where, like a lot of Stardom matches in tag matches, they find their core group to finish on and they spend plenty of time on that. But just the story they weave through that is done quite well. And Yuzuki in 2 matches is proving to be a fantastic babyface in peril with enough fire that you're not just going, oh, I hope you do well, but like, okay, give me the kicks, give me the violence.
So I don't want to skip to the end because I do want to talk about Tayo a lot too, but they were slapping each other in the face, Aikawa and Nanai, and this is just because it's a natural reaction, but I loved it. Aikawa gets slapped and she grabbed her face in pain like a normal person, and then she hit it right back with one that was maybe the loudest one of the entire exchange, but if you just remember, right, what Aikawa's background is, right? She's a idol model, whatever you want, and she's doing this You just applaud her the whole time because it's like, man, your looks are very important to your previous career, and now you're here getting the taste slapped out of your mouth, and you're giving it right back. And when she almost got the win in the closing minutes, I was like, it was like I was watching a live show. I was like, I know she doesn't win this because you knew Nanai was not losing. Which
funny how that doesn't change over 11 years.
Yeah, very ever. She had a much longer career of never losing. But I was so into it, and I think that just speaks to her babyface ability. It was so natural. You wanted to cheer for her, even though she could kick your head off. That's the fun thing to play there. Like, yeah, she's this great underdog babyface. Oh, she could kick my head off, which she ultimately did many matches after that to many competitors.
Yeah, it's a great showcase for Aizawa, but it's also good, like, if you're coming into Stardom completely blind and you don't know the history of Stardom, which I'm sure there are people maybe listening to this show, following along with us, who don't know a lot of the history. It's a great showcase. Yeah, you get a great little showcase of what these main players were. After this match and the previous match, you know what Aikawa was about. You get a good idea of what Nanai Takahashi is about. And Natsuki Taiyo, who is someone who is criminally underknown and underappreciated in modern Stardom circles, straight away you go, oh, okay, this is where, Azumi, Starlight Kid, these kind of wrestlers come from. You can see that DNA in her from the very moment of this match.
The she of moments that I watched Taiyo, I was like, oh, that's Azumi. That's Azumi. Like she hit. So at one point, Taiyo hits the diving stomp from the top. It's identical to Azumi. It's like the speed that she goes in there. Like she doesn't get a lot of height on it. It's just driving herself into the opponent. And I was like, that is. I'm watching Azumi wrestle right now. Taiyo's arguably the best high speed wrestler of all time. And that's not me fibbing. That is just the truth. And she's like the epitome of why we do a show like this. Because like you said, one of the most underrated wrestlers of all time. Like she wouldn't be on the Mount Rushmore of Stardom, but she's at least in the conversation. She's not on it. But if you were to list out 25 people, she's easily on the list.
Especially when you're looking at these early years, when they needed the veteran support people to kind of guide these young wrestlers through. She was the perfect kind of person to get in and go, you want to go fast? You want to highlight this aspect of wrestling? Yeah. No one better than Taiyo to give you the 411 on what to do in the ring at a mile a minute.
Yeah, and I thought she did that really well, actually, with Iris when they were in there against one another.
It was interesting watching that because you could tell Iris was a step or two slower. Struggling to keep up. And that's fair enough with Taiyo. But it was interesting seeing her kind of adapt to that. It's like, she goes a bit too quick and, Iris is struggling to catch up and then just tweaks the game a little bit to sort of make sure both of them look good because, again, Iris wasn't that, experience coming to this. We don't know if it was just one match or whether there's more Mexican independence, but she wasn't a veteran by any means.
No.
But they didn't want to make her look bad. They wanted to find a way to highlight what she could do. And it was a pretty decent effort. I walked away not being like, oh, I'm glad she didn't stick around for long.
Yeah. She was like 15 or 16 at the time.
She was in university.
Okay. There you go.
She took time off her university studies to come to Japan, came in December 2010. Rossi picked her up. They had ramen. And she was only going to be over there for a couple of months. But, apparently quite smart, quite educated, traveled the world a bit already. So, stopping the path for her.
Yeah. She just, dropped in for the first match in Stardom's history and was like, yeah, this is cool. Whatever, no big deal. Credit to her, for being in this spot. Obviously, she didn't know at the time how important it would be. But when you're with those three, looking back, it's like, yeah, you're going to stick out because we know what would go on to happen. But as I said to you when I was watching the match, she's not bad. No. For her experience level, whatever it was at the time, because we don't know if it was really one match or more. I was still impressed. I mean, she wasn't there training with everyone either.
No. She rocked up, and then a month later she was in this show. And I think the other thing in all this is she's in the ring with two veterans and the most important wrestler in Stardom's immediate future. She didn't get to showcase comparative to the other rookies, the true rookies, like some of the ones we're going to mention afterwards. Potentially, if she was being compared to those, you would look at it more favorably and, oh, yeah, she was struggling to keep up with Natsuki Taiyo of all people, or, being outshone by Yuzuki Aikawa. Well, yeah, that's going to happen. That's not an indictment on you.
Yeah. And important, because we kind of have glossed over her. Nanai, of course, very important to this match. She served as really the base, I think, for what was a lot of the best action in it. For me, this was probably either this or the main event is match of the night.
This was that match of the night for me.
Yeah.
The main complaint was
this was cleaner.
A little long. Just a little longer than it should have, but it's a lot cleaner. You've got better wrestlers at this stage, more engaging, and that's not a knock on the main event, but this should be the better match because you've got the more experienced wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, this kind of was the main event. It's just you want to establish Stardom right off the gate. You want to have that
people coming to Stardom. If they're going to know anyone, it's going to be Nanai, Taiyo, or Yuzuki from her idol background. They're not going to know Yoshiko and Yoko Bito.
Yeah, so if you don't want to watch this whole show, which I'm telling you now, you don't have to watch every match. To me, there's two matches that are must see. This one and the semi, for other reasons. But if you don't want to watch the whole show, watch this one. You'll get some really good wrestling out of it, which is always important, I know, for viewers. But you also just see, like, this match was the perfect scope of where they were going to go with these three at the helm. I don't want to keep Taiyo out of that. I know Nanai and Aikawa went on to be the original champions, but Taiyo was very important in being that mid-carder key for them. And we're going to get to a lot of her great matches down the line as well, which I'm excited about. But that's first match. Nanai Takahashi and Iris walking out with the win. Big shock, Nanai pinned Aikawa, which, is what it is. The next match was Mika Nagano versus Eri Sousa.
You want to call yourself a hardcore Stardom fan? Name 4 of their matches.
So I actually have a fun little note here.
Ooh.
So Rossi, our good friend Rossi Gal, had a blog back in the day, and we'll go to it a number of times throughout this series. Whenever we don't
have a lot of source material from that era, and this is you couldn't ask for much better source.
Yeah. So Eri Sousa, she failed her protest twice in a row. That's what he says here. Just shooting from the hip. She was like a frog that's stared at by a snake, and she lacked the appearance of wanting to take the exam. She must be feeling more frustrated than anyone else. If so, I want her to express her feelings. If this happens, she wants to protest as many times as she wants to until she passed. Ready? And remember, this is translate, so I'm doing my best here. But never compromise. If she likes professional wrestling, she has no choice but to do her best without giving up. The protest is different from the school exam, and it's not good to be able to do the spot. A place to see if you can do it as a professional. That's why practice is endless as long as you're active. Next time, I want you to shed tears of joy when you pass, but the pure fighting of the girls touches my heart. I would like to represent this as a flag. So to give insight, Sousa instantly, I thought from the beginning of this match, kind of exemplified that, kind of her nervousness, her uncertainty. And I thought that was a
schoolgirl outfit.
Yeah, schoolgirl outfit. So it really fit what Rossi was saying.
Yeah.
And of course, she fought Nagano, who was more of a MMA type wrestler. She had the sports bra, the shorts. Pretty much what
had advertisers on them,
she had the UWF look going that Konami had when she fought Shuri. This match, I mean, not much to write home about. Very quick. Yeah. Sousa did have I felt like she was crying the whole time.
She heard Rossi say, "I want you to be crying," and she took that a little too literally. Yeah. That's all. Look, this is a 3-minute match between two people who, I mean, this was Eri's
the video
first
was legitimately
match.
5 minutes. Totally.
Yeah. and Nagano had 2 matches in Ice Ribbon a couple of years prior to this match, which Rossi in the blog basically says, they happened. Don't, we're not really basing her future and expectations off of those. I think that the beautiful thing about Eri is that she graduated, she passed her test on Christmas Eve. So it was a nice little Christmas present for her before coming in and getting to finally wrestle in this match after failing the test a couple of times, which would be difficult when you're seeing your peers go in for the first time and pass, or even failing once like Mayu did and then coming back and passing. Would be frustrating to be, when am I going to get there? And thankfully she got there in time for the first show. This was a fun little match. It's inoffensive. The crowd responded to the right moments, like when there's a little comedy segment, they laughed to that. When there was a couple of more intense moments, they were reacting to that. One thing I really liked about this was you could actually see them fighting through the pinfall.
Yes.
Typically, you 1, 2, okay, now I move and kick out. But it felt like there was actually, I don't want to be stuck down here and kick out as soon as possible. There's a struggle. The person you expect to win this wins this. Like I compared the look, like you look at both of these wrestlers, within a second, you already know basically the character and expectations of this match that you need to know. Reminds me a lot of TJPW. You see a wrestler, like, okay, you are this character, I can expect this from you. And that's what you get.
Yeah. There's some interesting little tidbits here about Nagano. So she, according to Cage Match again, her Stardom run in 2011. So she beat Sousa here. That's important. The MMA one, by the way, people. Just want to.
Yes.
She wrestled.
I had to write down their gimmicks next to the names, I'll be honest.
Yeah. So she had 5 matches and she won 4 of them. She defeated Mayu Utani, Yoko Bito, Arisa Hoshiki, and she lost in the World of Stardom tournament semifinal to Yoko Bito. So she had a more crowded spot than you probably thought, folks.
I mean, look, if you were to you retire and you come back in 2022, you've got a daughter or something. She said, you had a wrestling career, didn't you? And you're like, yes. Oh, who did you face? Well, I beat Mayu Utani, Arisa Hoshiki, Yoko Bito. They're pretty good names to sort of mention and throw up. Yeah, no, I knocked them. I beat them in the middle of the ring. Probably no need to mention Eri, but
she also
not everyone can say they beat the icon of Stardom.
No. She also returned. So that tournament final match that I talked about, which we will be watching down the line for Stardom X Stardom, spoiler alert, is she came back after that match for the final show of Yu Suzuki Akawa's career, which was the Ryogoku show. Not going to try to say it. I don't need to pull Mayu here. So we're just going to Ryogoku. But this is a fun little fact. She teamed with Nai Takahashi and Tsukasa Fujimoto to go against Hiroyo Matsumoto, Kaori Oniyama, and Shuri. So just a lot to unpack there. That was in 2013, by the way. So you kind of just got to skip ahead to when Yuzuki Akawa retired.
One of many legends.
Yeah, she was the one that stuck out there. But she came back for that.
She was the Iris of the first match in that particular one.
She was. But that is that match. We can move on.
If you're watching the whole show, watch it. It doesn't take much time, but I wouldn't go out of my way to seek out this match.
Yeah, Sousa lasted a lot longer. She would go on. She wrestled with Stardom until 2013. She would go to JWP. She also competed in Pro Wrestling Wave, Ice Ribbon, Seedling, Diana, for example. So she was around until 2015.
Clearly, she didn't care about pro wrestling. Yeah. Rossi, obviously was pushing her to kind of show herself and prove herself, and it was clearly there because she didn't just come in and then leave straight away. She made a career out of it, so good on her.
She's better known as Eerie or Akira Rin. That's the main name if you want to know there. If you ever want to go find her matches, you're welcome. Okay, moving on. So we're not going to really talk a lot about this, but we had Haruka versus Passion Naki, which is Natsuki Taiyo dressed up in a mask. Haruka, of course, is the child who famously wrestled Kenny Omega. As many people know the story. I don't know if people have ever really seen the match, but that did happen, of course. She was born in 2002. So
same age as Azumi.
Yep. Yep.
And Miyu Amasaki, 02 line.
She wrestled through a lot of time limit draws in her career.
Only one person managed to beat her that wasn't in a time limit draw.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone else couldn't beat her in time, including Kenny Omega.
No, her involvement in Stardom will always be a weird one to me. It's something that I personally, I'll say this, wasn't comfortable watching. It's a hard watch because, you're watching a child in there. Now, I will say, fundamentally, she was gifted. She was doing moves and stuff, and I was like, what's happening? What am I watching here? But it's just something that's, not for me. Not for many, because, she only wrestled this 1 year, and then she was done as a wrestler. She didn't come back, and, she's not wrestling now, if those people are wondering. But yes, she is the wrestler that wrestled Kenny Omega, and this did go to a time limit draw, like all of her other matches except for her final one.
Yeah. Yoshiki doesn't do time limit draws to a kid.
No. I was a little terrified when I said that was the person that beat her.
Yeah. Look, I get if someone doesn't enjoy watching a kid wrestle like this, I do totally get it. To me, the way it's presented, she's a 9-year-old. To me, this felt like a parent play fighting with a kid. And everything Natsuki was doing was very clearly it was the
swing that got me. I was like, oh, there was
you
a
do
lot
that
of
with kids. They love it. The spot that really popped me was when she would try and put Haruka in the Boston Crab, but she was literally too small to actually get that locked in, and she just slipped back out. They did it 4 times, and it was funnier every time for me because it still doesn't work.
Taiyo was good in this spot, of course. But yeah, she wrestled twice, and she was the heel of the match, which was funny. Which, the fans got into it. That was another interesting part. The oohs and ahs from a lot of things. Obviously, it's the kids, so they're cheering on the poor kid that's trying to wrestle. But fundamentally, I was impressed.
If she had kept at wrestling, it would have been fascinating to see.
Yeah.
Does she go on to be kind of like Azumi? Is that kind of a career trajectory she could have? Because, 9 years old, she was doing well. Obviously, you're not buying into the situation. No. It's total suspension of disbelief. But technically, she's doing quite a decent job. Again, first ever match, and it's an exhibition, but, good on her for doing that. Unfortunately, I heard part of the reason she stopped was she was getting bullied at school about it, which,
that's sad.
Kids suck. But it would make sense that if that was happening, you probably wouldn't want to keep wrestling. But I do hope that she can look back on her time in Stardom with positivity and realize that that she did enjoy herself potentially. And
I hope she looks at the wrestlers that she faced and just sits back and wow, they're the biggest wrestlers in the world.
Because you wouldn't have thought back then Kenny Omega would become the man he.
No. I just like to think in my head that she just became an instant Kenny Omega fan after that match, and her seeing him be what he would become, in New Japan and AEW is just a cool moment for her.
Or just looking, wow. Okada couldn't beat Kenny, but I survived. I'm better than Okada.
I have a better record against Kenny Omega than Okada.
Exactly.
Anyways, let's move on. So this was, for me, shocker, the most important match of the show. And in terms of Stardom history, it might be the most important. So this was the double debut. It was Mayu Iwatani versus Arisa Hoshiki. I'm not very secretive about my fandom for these two. They're probably my 2 favorite wrestlers of all time. Well, they definitely are. There's no probability to that. And just you see them here in their first match one screams confidence, the other screams hesitance, and it's exactly who you expect it to be. We have a fun little thing from Rossi's blog once again here, which tells me all I need to know that Arisa Hoshiki was the one. Arisa Hoshiki passed the second Stardom protest. After all, what I want to see in the protest is motivation and single-mindedness. She absolutely has the spirit and tenacity to pass. To put it simply, Arisa was shining. Everything is full of confidence, and what you do is unexpected. She has a natural personality. I'm sure she'll end up being a Stardom secret weapon that will grab her many fans. So what this says to me is she would have been the one.
Yeah.
She was, and it's very, very well documented. Mayu Iwatani wasn't the one from the start. You made the point she failed her test originally, right? She had to do it a second time.
Yeah.
The conversation of freedom doesn't go away. She wasn't the chosen one of that. Io Shirai obviously was. Kairi too was definitely chosen. You can see that sometimes when we watch now. Just the star power. But Arisa Hoshiki, right from the start, she had something in her that Rossi took notice of before she could even wrestle. And watching this match, it's so much fun as a fan because you're not going into it expecting what they would do, years later.
Yeah.
And we never got that, by the way, which, destroys me. But it is nice to think that, they came together all those years later. They were in the same faction. They were, tagged many times. So that's pretty sweet. Like they were friends from the get-go here. And by the way, the confident one was Arisa Hoshiki, and the hesitant, nervous, shy one was, of course, Mayu Iwatani.
She looked petrified. When her name's getting called, the camera focuses in on her face, and even Arisa at first, you could see there was like a nervous energy.
Sure.
Some people react like they look like they're
Aikawa did
themselves. That. Yeah, Aikawa was the same, but Arisa, comes in bounding, it's kind of that giddy energy. You just got to get it out. I felt so bad for Maya in this moment because you could again. It kind of works in her favor in a sense because you're like, I know exactly what you're feeling right now because she's not acting like this is, she's thinking, oh crap, what have I got myself into? I need to go back to Yamagata Prefecture and just go back into my room. But she sticks it out, and I've heard rumors that her career turned out okay. I need to do a bit more research into Stardom, but I hear Mayu Iwatani, she got better.
According to Scott E., she went on to be the greatest of all time.
There's more than a couple of cage matches listed.
Yeah.
It's not like Iris. You can find a few more.
Yeah, I think she's, I think she actually lasted so long. She's fighting for the IWGP Women's title. So
crazy,
pretty cool there.
But it's crazy to go back and look at this because, they're both brand new rookies, and we're leaning a lot on cage match. It is a little bit hit or miss, but these wrestlers at the moment are rated 9.73 and 9.31 on cage match, which is a far cry from this first match. But again, you get to look back and see just how far they've come from this particular moment in January of 11 years ago.
Reese had so few matches, and she did what she did.
Yeah.
It just makes you think, what if? Which is the question I will always ask. But this match itself, you saw a lot of what they'd go on to be. Even for Mayu, who was sitting there terrified, petrified, probably butterflies in her stomach, maybe more gross things in her stomach, thinking about this. You just saw it. I thought, at least, right? Like, if you watch Mayu Iwatani long enough, you kind of get all the Mayu-isms that anytime she does them. And, this is her first match, and she's just doing things that you're sitting there like, oh, there's Mayu. Like,
little flashes of the red belt champion. And
yes, she wasn't a made product in a day. She had better forearms than Arisa. at this time.
And she slapped harder too, which really surprised me.
She did, but she did not kick harder, unfortunately. Which, tough.
Yeah.
But that was like so fun for me just sitting here. This was the first time I watched it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I kept it for this show. I've literally stared at it for like years now. But I knew I wanted to do something like this. So I was like, I'm gonna give genuine reaction. I'm gonna wait. And it was everything I knew it would be. A little clumsy, a little almost not perfect, but just like she somehow, despite all of what she was going through at this time, and you could tell, she still went out there. She still put on a show. She did one of the arm drag, bouncing off the ropes, and that was when I just sat there and I was like, man, she did that in her first match.
Yeah, she hits the crucifix. Like I know a lot of people when they talk about this match, they're like, it's you got to go in with reserved expectations, and look, you do.
I didn't.
Generally, though, like it is like, okay, you've got to remember first match, rookie versus rookie. This is better than I was expecting. I know when I first watched it a couple of years ago, I was like, oh, I thought this was going to be just horrible based on what I was hearing. But like, it's rookie versus rookie, but they do it pretty good. If this was my first match as a professional wrestler, yes, there's some clumsy spots. It's not perfect, but if that was my first match, I'd be happy with it. I'd be like, okay, I can do this thing.
Yeah, I want to, of course, talk about Arisa too. I mean, Mayu is very important because of obvious reasons, but Arisa was as good as that Rossi message kind of said. Like just the personality, it explodes when she's out there. She's like excited. She's, like you said, kind of jumping at the bit for this match to start. That Brazilian kick was with her day one.
And it came out of nowhere, and the crowd was not expecting it. They're reacting as you'd expect, and then all of a sudden she ducks a forearm strike and just boom, kicks it, and everyone's like, wait, what the hell did I just see? And she's nice enough to give you a second one just in case you blinked. And I was like, okay, this is if you watch this match with no context, if you then told the person Risa goes on to be just a phenom, you wouldn't bat an eyelid. Mayu might be like, oh, good on her. But Arisa, you can see that. Right. You can see that in Arisa already. And she's just 16 years old doing this.
Yeah. The pop, the reaction to that kick was kind of like what I had, because I've seen a handful of her early matches, so I knew she had the kick early. You just aren't ready for it, though, in the first match. You're really not. And you're not ready for it to hit it with such precision either. Because
the rest of the kicks were a little bit more, she held him back. She wasn't trying to kill Mayu. And then she pulls that out of nowhere. Like, it really was like, wait, what? What did I see?
Yeah. We watched two world-class wrestlers in their very first match not only have a competent match, but one that I really do think is a must-see for Stardom fans. At least Mayu Iwatani fans. Yeah. But I mean, we're going to talk about Arisa more than enough in these early years because she does have some important matches. But also, we'll get to her down the line, of course, which is very far away, or it's not. Me and Trent could decide whenever we want to talk about it. And if I had my choice, I'd talk about it as soon as possible. But this is a two-person
make
vote.
It sound like you've wanted to, and I've said no.
Well, I definitely want to. I just haven't brought it up yet.
Yeah. You haven't been like, let's make the next one Arisa. I've been like, no. I haven't. No. We have a plan, which you'll hear about. But Arisa will come.
She will come. She was just so good right off the bat. Mayu, the funny thing about Mayu, like you said, I've heard the same thing. Like, she was clumsy. She wasn't all that good right at the beginning. And I watched that. I was like, you just see so much of Mayu that we see now in this. Like, yes, it's not perfect.
Yeah.
Not even close. But it's like, you could see it. Like, you can just see it. And maybe that's the Mayu fans in us saying that. Like, I know some people don't like her as much as we do, but I don't know. There's something there. Arisa Shiki gets the win with 2 Brazilian kicks because one wasn't enough. Even though the first one was out of nowhere. It's great. So definitely worth checking out. Lots of fun there. And yes, like Trent said, we've been going through the careers of these people. They went on to do some successful things.
Yes.
IWGP Women's title match and the Historic Crossover coming up for Mayumi Utani, and Arisa Shiki, of course, had one of, if not the best, Wonder of Stardom title reigns of all time. That unfortunately came to an end due to retirement, but she retired twice. No wonder why her and Hazuki had such hatred for each other. They were trying to battle on retirements. Anyways, the main event.
Yes.
Yoko Bito versus Yoshiko. 2 very key figures in the history of Stardom. Yoko, someone that I think goes in that Natsuki Tayo conversation, is very underrated, very underappreciated. Yeah. And she's another reason I wanted to do the show so bad, because it's like, she was so good. Like, when I did my watch through, because as I became a Stardom fan, she was one of the people that jumped out to me. And I want to talk about good kicks. Yoko Bito had good kicks. Yeah. Yoshiko, I mean, she looks a lot different now, obviously, but that the menacing look of Yoshiko was there. Right. The moment
that's the first thing that struck me about this match is like, for the whole rest of the show, everyone kind of comes in and they're not gimmick heavy. They're just someone here ready to wrestle, first match kind of thing. And then you see Yoshiko and she's doing kind of the delinquent, crouch in the corner and just kind of doesn't want to be there. The gaudy, gold jumpsuit that she's wearing. She's in character straight away. And to me, she instantly stands out on this show because she's portraying someone. It's not just she's here to wrestle, but that's a character there, which I think was perfect for the main event. It made it a lot more interesting because it did. The match itself had structure, it had face heel dynamics that the other one did, but not to this extent. And it added a lot, I thought.
It did. The match wasn't like, let's just say this, like maybe a year later they probably have like an infinitely better match.
But again, Rookie and Yoko Bito had 1 3-minute exhibition match before that.
Exactly.
And they're put in the main event of the company's first ever show.
Yeah, so, we talked about the match prior to this. We talked about this one, that it's just like these two were at the face of Stardom very quickly compared to Mayu and Arisa.
And you could see it in the match as well. Like, it's fundamentally, it's a lot stronger. The match itself has story structure. Like, it has the beats and flows and ebbs that you would expect from a pro wrestling match. These two felt like they weren't in their first matches. Whereas Arisa and Mayu, they showed promise, but if you told me that was their first match, you would buy it.
Yeah, of course, Yoshiko has her history, and we will get to that someday. Not one I will be rushing to, obviously. No. But it was just amazing how she had that to her right from the rip. Like, I knew this was her first match, yet I had to double check because I was like, wait a minute. I literally like second guessed myself. I was sitting there watching. I was like, what? She's Yoshiko already. Right? Like, she developed her in-ring skills and stuff, but like everything about her was Yoshiko from the very start. And that's just, some incredible stuff. And Yoko Bito she just had it. She had it too. Like you said, there's a reason these two main evented. Yeah. They were ready earlier on. And she won with a head kick.
Yeah, it was the spinning kick. The roundhouse kept it going into the second spin.
Which was
Yoshiko
awesome.
Goes down.
Which was awesome. I love kicks, so like this speaks to it. Like, Aikawa probably had the best kicks on the show just because like hers, I knew very much hurt.
Hashiki had the best single kick.
Aikawa
had the best overall kicks. And I think Yoko Bito, of the 3 kickers, and Rossi mentions this in the blog, he's like, we have 3 people with different like martial art kind of backgrounds here. Karate, Taekwondo, and I think it was just kind of MMA or something. But like, you could see the difference in their kicks. But Yoko Bito felt the most well-rounded at this point. Aikawa leaned very heavily in the kicks, but Bito was able to do a bit more in the match.
Yeah, for sure. This match was the second best of the night, if you're wondering on that. Worth watching because of their importance and their history to Stardom as well. If you were to watch the matches, watch the first one, watch Mayu and Arisa, and watch this one. Just for the history of Stardom and whatnot. I was really in awe because of their experience level. Because we talked about the last match with Mayu and Arisa, and we saw signs there. You watch this one, if you had no idea, you would thought these two have been wrestling for longer. Like the prior match, you knew they were rookies, right? Like if you went in blind, this one they had, and I think it does play to what Yoshiko knew early on as a wrestler. Like you said, establish that face and heel right from the get-go. And I think it's important to just note that Yoko Bito won the first ever Stardom main event.
Yeah, and I mean, that's the thing, as much as she's maybe forgotten in modern Stardom circles, and I'm guilty of it myself. When I first got into Stardom, I didn't appreciate how good she was at the time. But at the end of the day, she was there from the very beginning. She won the first ever main event. And even though she doesn't reach the pure heights of some of Stardom's very best, she's an important player for quite a few years.
Yeah. She's also in and out of the company, as we'll discuss. She, wrestled till 2012, and I think came back in 2016. I think off the top of my head. Let me check Cage Match. Yes. She played an important role in both her runs with the company. Of course, she was in the All-Star Rumble, All-Star Dream Cinderella. She didn't really do anything in it, but she was in it.
I mean, most of the people in that
Aikawa did. Aikawa did stuff. I can say I could beat her, but not enough people talk about that. But yeah, there's
a few other things that happened on that show that probably deserve. Yeah.
Well,
Yoshiko was on that show.
Yeah, great match. Takusa Nagayo was also in the All-Star Rumble, which more history, which is kind of
and Emi Sakura to bring us into a nice circle.
Emi Sakura had the whole entrance and everything, which was awesome.
Everyone from Gato Move was there as well.
Yeah, we need more of that. I like the involvement. But Birth of Nova, Stardom, first ever show. We've won an hour here. We did pretty good here. Overall, how'd you feel after this show? As we go on our wonderful journey here down the Stardom Road, shout out Tam Nakano. Did you feel like I explained earlier, you felt that it factor to this company, even though it was early? It's just they had something here.
Look, it's difficult because there's not a lot of promotions I've sort of started from ground zero. So you are kind of, it's impossible to not think, well, this is the company that I now follow religiously and cover and watch, for years now. But you can definitely tell there's a lot of potential. They've got a lot of young talent, especially knowing that 3/4 of the roster had never wrestled before this night. The quality there was far better than it probably had any right to be. And that speaks highly of the people that Rossi surrounded himself with. People like Fuka, people like Nanae Takahashi, and also to the heart and dedication of these wrestlers. Because, they didn't get tons of training beforehand. And there was a certain reliance that you had to come in, you had to earn your spot, and you had to work hard for this. They didn't have a Stardom dojo. You couldn't just rock up whenever you wanted and practice. They had set times. It's like, we're using this ring for an hour and a half. You've got to be there. You've got to put the effort in. And they did. You read reports in Rossi's blog where Aikawa was going to gyms and training hard outside of the normal hours because she wanted to be ready for it. And you can see that dedication. You can see that heart in these wrestlers. And if a small company like this is going to succeed, whether to become what it becomes or just to keep pumping along in a very difficult industry to survive in, you need those kind of wrestlers to build around and to move forward with. And they found the right people, and the right people found their spots.
Yeah. I'm going to try to do this thing every main like whole show we watch, which I'll probably forget because we're not going to watch a whole show for a while. But I'm going to do 3 big takeaways. First one, Yusuke Kawa was the star of this company from the very start. Nanai Takahashi, despite what people feel of her now, was so important to making this work. So important. You just felt it in that first match. You feel with the training, obviously, right? She, Fuka gets the main credit, as she should, but Nanai did take part in training as well. So felt that was important. And they picked some pretty good rookies. I think they all went out to be pretty good. I know Yoshiko gets the remarks she did for, as we know, but I think she did a good job at turning her career around after that. She had a great career before that. It's pretty, I mean, she's kind of broken down now, unfortunately, as a wrestler. She doesn't really get to compete much anymore, but
it's still 11-year career. Well, 10 years because she had to take a year off for the aftermath of that match that we're referencing. But I mean, for her to have the career she did after that speaks to her, I guess, focus and drive to get back to something.
And that's a real turning point that, as much as we'd like to avoid it, we have to talk about it.
We are going to address it, but it's also an episode we don't want to approach half-cocked. No. We want to make sure we've got everything that we can get. We're never going to be able to cover it truly because the only people who truly know what happened there are those directly involved, and they're not exactly lining up to talk about that, understandably. But we want to, if we're going to cover that topic, we want to do it as well as we possibly can. So it's down the road. There's other stuff to talk about.
We do research. That is going to be the most researched episode of this entire series. I can almost guarantee it. But we're not going to end on a sour note. Watch this show for Natsuki Taiyo, Yuzuki Kawa, Nanai Takahashi,
Eri Sousa, Iris.
Eri Sousa, Miki Nagato. Mayu Iwatani versus Arisa Shiki and their debut matches, and of course the main event, Yokobito and Yoshiko, and get the feel that Stardom kicked off with right from the very beginning, because I think it's an essential for Stardom fans.
Oh yes, it's on Stardom World. It's easy to access,
which is nice.
Yes. Do yourself a favor, if just for historical context, it's nice to go back and see where it all began, which is the whole point of this show that we're doing. If you don't care about knowing Stardom's history, what are you doing listening to this podcast?
We're cheating. You know that? Because we're just making it podcast idea. This is just something I wanted to do. And I was like, you know what? I'll make it in a thing where I talk about it. But it's a lot of fun, and hopefully down the line we can create as much fun as it is for us, for you guys. With this second episode, we made it through, which means it's time to talk about that third episode.
What are we doing? What are we doing in a fortnight's time, Scott?
So there's this important trio in Stardom's history. I don't know if people have heard of them. Threedom. And Trent had the great idea. There's a pretty big event coming up in the history of Stardom, possibly the biggest match ever in Stardom's history. I say it is.
I think that's a fair statement.
Which, of course, is the New Japan Stardom Historic Crossover Show, which will feature 2/3 of Threedom competing as Mayu Iwatani faces Kairi for the WGP Women's Championship. I'm so excited. I'm getting chills thinking about it. So we're going to do a little bit of Threedom convo, of course, talk about the group and its importance. And, I think everyone knows how important they were to Stardom, but, a general conversation, because there's going to be plenty of episodes regarding all three of them. Might be the whole series at this point, but, we'll see. But specifically, which was a great idea by Trent, we're going to watch the 3 singles matches of Kairi and Mayu Iwatani. Which
it's actually crazy to think there was only 3. Yeah. When I had the idea, I thought, okay, how much do we actually have to watch to prepare for this show? And I'm like, oh, there's only 3. Oh, there's only 2 on Stardom World. And thankfully, Scott worked his magic to find the mystery match, the 2012 match.
Took me about
first face
5 minutes.
But yeah, so we're going to go through those 3 matches. So for those of you listening, if you want to do the research, the prep beforehand, we're going to watch. They had a match in 2012, a match in 2015, and then a match in 2017 to prep for their 2022 match.
What a world. What a world. So exciting. But that's what to look forward to for the next episode. Hopefully that can gear you up for a historic crossover. That's the fun of Stardom Road. We get to go up and down the road as much as we want. To feed the current events, to feed to whatever the hell we want to talk about.
The moment Scott's like, no, screw it. We're talking about Aretha. And we'll do an Aretha episode.
I mean, if I had my way, this would just be the Mayu show, but it probably will be. What am I kidding? It already is. We're a second show in. I talked at length about her first ever match where she wrestled for 9 minutes. It's fine. But
we just got 3 to cover next fortnight.
Yeah, 3 to cover. 3dom to cover. I'm really excited to talk about 3dom because of obvious reasons. Everyone knows how important they are. If there's a Mount Rushmore, I personally say it's Aikawa and those 3, it's a tough convo because truthfully, the one that is borderline, in my opinion, out of the 4 I just named, is Kairi.
But I fully agree to the point that Ryan and I actually had a article on WrestleIn where we debated Stardom's Mount Rushmore. Io and Mayu were locks, and then we debated the other. We debated the other 2, and Ryan was pushing for Kairi. I was pushing for Aikawa. Ryan also pushed for Nanae Takahashi, and I pushed for Kagetsu, aka Yu Ishino. So they were the sort of 4 being all debated for the final 2 spots. So go check that out.
All very important. Maybe we'll have an episode where we debate because, after a long time, I think we'll have a good idea of who should be on there and who shouldn't be. But I kind of already gave my answer away, but it could change. It could change. We're gonna watch.
Maybe Mika Nagano can make that list.
We'll make a secondary Mount Rushmore of the people, the most underappreciated people in Star.
I'm actually surprised you Americans haven't made a second Mount Rushmore.
Yeah, I mean, no one cares enough about making another mountain. But that's all. Trent, this is airing next week. So is there any content people should be looking out for?
I have no idea. There might be. But just follow me on One Up Culture on Twitter, One Up Culture, and you'll see what I'm doing when I'm doing it, more so than me trying to think into the future. I do have stuff planned, but I don't know when it's coming out, and other stuff I haven't written yet. So, yeah.
I'm only laughing because I, of all people, am saying, oh, do you have anything you know for a fact will be out in the coming week? And I'm sitting here on waiting back for multiple things and trying to get myself to write, which has been a wonderful task the past couple of days. But you can check out my article on Maria, Marvelous's Maria, which was a fun little article put together. Kind of my follow-up from last year where I wrote an article about Mio Momono. In her year, I think Maria was the next Marvelous wrestler to take a step up and someone to keep an eye out for 2023. That was on Voices of Wrestling. Probably came out the day after we recorded this, but that's something. But it's there. But of course, follow me at Scott E Wrestling. That's the best way to know what I'm up to because I never know what I'm up to. I send a lot of things out. Send a lot of emails out. Send a lot of. I'm tired thinking about it. I'm going to end the show. This was episode 2 of Stardom Road. Next time we talk 3dom. We talk Mayu versus Kairi. For Trent, I'm Scott. So long.
Hey guys, gals, and non-binary pals.
It's Amanda Bones.
And I'm Ashley.
Of How to Talk to Your Friend About Wrestling, the podcast on the Count Out Wrestling Podcast Network, a weekly show where we talk about all of our favorite things, babes, blood, and brutality.
We also talk about other fun things, like is Kenny Omega finally too tan? And how much blood is too much blood? Because that looks like way too much blood.
So join us on the adventure of teaching me, Amanda Bones, about wrestling.
This has been a Count Out Podcast.